Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jeremiah, the 46th chapter, Defeat of Pharaoh Foretold. And here Jeremiah receives basically like a vision, right, concerning what the Lord shows him how the battle of Carchemish, ends up going, and then also the how the Babylonians, how the Lord set them up, or the Chaldeans, as they're also referred to take over Egypt. Because when you look in history, you had the Egyptian forces that went up, right, to Carchemish, which was a place of the battle, to defend the remnants of the Assyrian Empire as it was going down. Okay, and it was basically during that time that they lost. All right, they lost against the the Babylonian forces, and then had to retreat back into their own land. And sometime after that, the Babylonians came and, as Jeremiah saw, conquered Egypt. So it says here, this is Jeremiah 46:1, the word of the Lord Yahweh, which came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Gentiles, against Egypt, against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates, in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. And now let's look up Battle of Carchemish. I have it here, and I want to see the time. Okay, so they have it here around 605 BC, and I believe that does line up. Let's look up Jehoiakim. I believe that lines up. Yeah, so Jehoiakim started reigning in 609. So in his 4th year would have been 605, and that's when the Babylonians basically got that upper hand over the Egyptian forces over there. So it says here, against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt. Now this was Pharaoh Necho, the one that battled with Josiah, because he was on his way over there to Carchemish to support the Assyrians. And then Josiah came out and basically went to went to war with him and ended up, dying. Said Pharaoh Necho. Now he returned, but his army stayed to fight, right? Which is where you have what was going on over here. So it says here, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Order ye the buckler and shield, and draw near to battle, right? So get ready your shields, and prepare for battle. Harness the horses. Now, from the perspective of like seeing this, this is like either the Egyptian army or the Babylonian army. But let's say the Egyptian army, for example, being ready for war, their captains and whatnot, just speaking into their minds of their soldiers to everybody be ready, as like they chant or pep talk or war talk each other. Harness the horses and get up, ye horsemen, right? So strap down them horses and mount them, and stand forth with your helmets, furbish the spears, and put on the brigandines. And the furbishing the spears is to make sure everything is sharp and ready. The tools, the weapons, they're all ready for war, and you have your armor all set, right? That's the brigandines or brigandines. Wherefore have I seen them dismayed and turned away? Jeremiah's like, why am I seeing the Egyptians fleeing? And their mighty ones are beaten down and are fled apace, and look not back. For fear was round about, saith the Lord. So they basically ended up getting their asses handed to them, to where they were retreating, they were running away, basically forsaking that battle. Let not the swift flee away, nor the mighty man escape. They shall stumble and fall toward the north by the river Euphrates. So This goes to show you that the course of the battle was not going in the favor of the Egyptians. And that was because the Lord set up the Babylonians to reign, to be the next superpower, which the Egyptians were trying to intervene in that. Verse 7, who is this that cometh up as a flood, whose waters are moved as the rivers? This is poetically speaking about the armies of Pharaoh. Now, before going ahead, what I wanted to read was some information here on the Battle of Carchemish. More specifically down here as to how the battle went, or the historical records of it. And so here, this is an account, as it says, there are no surviving Egyptian records of the battle, either in text or artworks. All historical records of the conflict come from the Babylonian and Jewish sources. So this is from the Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle. Though you can, as you read it, you can see that there's clearly some bias in there towards in favor, obviously, of, as what is the saying? History is written in the something along the lines of it's told or written in the perspective of the winner. So it says here, one of the surviving Babylonian sources claims that Nebuchadnezzar II crossed the river to go against the Egyptian army, which lay in Carchemish. They fought with each other, and the Egyptian army withdrew before them, or before him. He accomplished their defeat decisively. As for the rest of the Egyptian army, which had escaped from the defeat so quickly that no weapon had reached them, in the district of Hamath, the Babylonian troops overtook and defeated them, so that not a single man escaped to his own country. At that time, Nebuchadnezzar conquered the whole area of Hamath. This source paints the battle as exceedingly decisive without any Egyptian surviving the conflict. However, the validity of this claim is questionable. It is not likely that the entire Egyptian army under Necho II was defeated in its entirety at the Battle of Carchemish. See, so once again, in terms of the Babylonians having the upper hand, true. In terms of them completely wiping out all the Egyptians, that's questionable, as we just read there. But it does line up with what we're reading here about the Egyptians fleeing. So, verse 8, Egypt riseth up like a flood, and his waters are moved like the rivers. He saith, I will go up and will cover the earth. I will destroy the city and the inhabitants thereof. And I also read this in the NLT. But basically, they're boasting, right, in their might or in the size of their army. NLT, it is the Egyptian army overflowing all the land, boasting that it will cover the earth like a flood, destroying cities and their people. Come up, ye horses, and rage, ye chariots, and let the mighty men come forth, the Ethiopians and the Libyans that handle the shield, right, referring to the Egyptian armies, and the Lydians that handle and bend the bow. For this is the day of the Lord God of hosts, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge him of his adversaries. And the sword shall devour, and it shall be satiate and made drunk with their blood. And it's similar wording, right, for when the Lord describes the time, the prophecies now, when he's going to gather the nations and judge them. But similarly, back then, he orchestrated this battle, right, that would take place at Carchemish, because remember that the Lord pronounced judgment not only against Israel, but also the neighboring countries, which, as we go through, in the subsequent chapters, you'll see. But he set up, for a portion of them for that judgment to come by way of the king of Babylon. Okay, so as it says here, and the sword shall devour, so there's going to be a lot of bloodshed, and it shall be satiate and made drunk with their blood. For the Lord God of hosts hath a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. Okay, which here at this time was where that battle took place. Over there in that region of Carchemish, I believe in around that area of Syria. Let me see if they have an image of the. Yeah. Yeah, so somewhere along these lines here. This map is not really a good map. But anyway, um, verse 11, go up into Gilead and take balm, O virgin, the daughter of Egypt. Now, the reference to getting medicine or balm from Gilead, this isn't the first time we've seen that, right? So, based on how it's used, you can infer that, they had a lot of good herbs and so on there. So sometimes you'll see that kind of reference is used, um, almost in like a rhetorical slash, parabolic-ish way, when it's describing a wound that is so bad that even the balm or the medicines of Gilead can't heal you. Right. So it says, go up into Gilead and take balm, O virgin, the daughter of Egypt. In vain shalt thou use many medicines, for thou shalt not be cured. So you're not going to be able to have a favorable outcome, right, in this battle. The nations have heard of thy shame, and also it also signified the downfall of Egypt, because Egypt was a world superpower, right, at some point. But as time went on, that power started to wane more and more and more and more, to the point where when the Greeks came in there, they got completely taken over. You had the Ptolemies and so on and so forth, which were Edomites. And then as history goes on, that region started to basically deviate more and more from what it originally was in its original glory. Verse 12, the nations have heard of thy shame, and thy cry hath filled the land. For the mighty man hath stumbled against the mighty, and they are fallen both together. So they went up there to fight against the Babylonians, and the course of that battle was supposed to change the tides of history. Well, it didn't go in their favor, and people, it was known that the Egyptians went and lost. All right, and then they basically had to retreat. The word that the Lord Yahweh spake to Jeremiah the prophet, so this was concerning the battle at Carchemish, and the subsequent part here is concerning the takeover or the invasion of Egypt by Babylon. Let me actually look up and see. There might be some secular history on here. Babylon takes over Egypt. Okay. See. So prophecies. So it says here, the Babylonian conquest of Egypt did not occur in a single event. Rather, the Babylonian army under Nebuchadnezzar II defeated the Egyptian army at the Battle of Carchemish in 605. This victory was a significant turning point, forcing Egypt to abandon its expansion into Syria and Palestine, and establishing Babylonian dominance in the region, from the AI overview that is. But it did not result in the conquest of Egypt itself. Later prophecies incorrectly attributed the conquest of Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, which actually happened in 525 BC when the Persian king Cambyses II conquered Egypt. Now, from what we read here, right, concerning what the Lord said he would do to Egypt, obviously, we go with what the scriptures say first. But it's also important to keep in mind that most of the information we have now on secular history is based on what is found, right? And so oftentimes these claims here are based on whether they find maybe any sources or evidence of, say, another conquest into Egypt by Nebuchadnezzar that have survived through the course of history, all right, either by the Egyptians or by the Babylonians. Okay, so typically if they don't find any physical, tangible proof or hieroglyphs or anything like that, then you'll see claims like this. However, based on what's written in the scriptures, we know that that's the judgment the Lord said that he brought or he would bring from the time of Jeremiah onto Egypt. Okay, and let me also look up here the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Take a look at that map. Yeah. So, they show it covered, a good amount of territory, but they don't show that they fully expanded into the territory of Egypt, but based on how the scriptures are, I'd say that, they would still have been considered, having been defeated already by the Babylonians, to be a vassal, or at least subject to a degree under the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So going back to Jeremiah 46 and 13, the word that the Lord spake to Jeremiah the prophet, how Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, should come and smite the land of Egypt. Declare ye in Egypt and publish in Migdol. And I say that because what I mentioned about the secular history, because for a period of time, Sargon II, which was referenced in the book of Isaiah, for a period of time, scholars were saying that was actually inaccurate, and I think they were trying to either link it up with another Assyrian king, or they were trying to say that what was written in the book of Isaiah wasn't really valid. And the reason was because they hadn't found any records of Sargon II in secular history. But at some point later on, somebody uncovered proof or information about Sargon, and they realized that Sargon, I believe, he was an Assyrian. Yeah, he was an Assyrian king. Didn't actually reign from the main capital where all the other Assyrian kings were. Hence, most of his records were not there. Okay, but they did find proof of, not that we needed it, but they did find proof of Sargon II. Since then, at that point, they were like, oh, wow, so it looks like what was written in the Bible was actually accurate. So, we go, like I said before, based on what's actually written in here. If the Lord said that's what was going to happen, then that's what's going to happen, versus any information that may have been found today. So continuing on, Jeremiah 46 verse 14. Declare ye in Egypt and publish in Migdol, and these are cities in Egypt, and publish in Noph and in Tahpanhes, where you had wicked Israelites that were dwelling there. Say ye, stand fast, and prepare thee, for the sword shall devour thee round about. So prepare, because you're about to suffer destruction. You're about to be conquered. Why are thy valiant men swept away? They stood not, because the Lord Yahweh did drive them. So what happened? Why did your mighty man fall? Why weren't they able to stand? And ultimately, it was because the Lord is the one who pushed them back, and he used the armies of the north, as they refer to here, the north country, to do so. He made many to fall, yea, one fell upon another. And they said, arise, let us go again to our own people and to the land of our nativity from the oppressing sword. See, so having in the midst of suffering, suffering and out of fear, this is more like a a scramble to retreat, all right, in order to preserve their lives. They did cry there, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is but a noise. He hath passed the time appointed. And I'll read this in a different translation for a bit more clarity. NLT, they will say, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, is a loudmouth who missed his opportunity, because his mindset was to make Egypt great again with the Assyrians now waiting and the Babylonians on their tail. If the Egyptians could take over and they could defeat the Babylonians, they would be like the dominant power in the stead of Babylon. But that didn't work out too well now, did it? And all that, boasting, like we read up a couple of verses, above, led to them just getting their ass whooped. Verse 18, as I live, saith the king, whose name is the Lord of hosts, Yahweh, surely as Tabor is among the mountains, and as Carmel by the sea, so shall he come. And Tabor and Carmel are like mountains, right? Or notable amongst, the mountains. And this is to poetically put emphasis on the fierceness, okay, of the the king of Babylon, or the Chaldeans, who would come against Egypt. Now, what's also interesting to keep in mind is when you something I thought that just came to mind, when you look at how actually the transition of power went, right, from Babylon, right, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, to the Medo-Persian Empire. Really, it wasn't much of a war per se, right? You had the top, right, which was you had Nabonidus, and then you had Belshazzar that Belshazzar was taken out, right? He was out of there, and the kingdom was translated into the hands of the Persians. And when you read in secular history, they'll tell you that the people actually welcomed Cyrus, right, and the Persians, and it's sort of like they just took over, right? And so the places that the Babylonian Empire had already conquered, they just inherited that, right? Assimilated it into their power, and then they extended that as well. And there is also secular history about them coming also into Egypt, which the AI overview was referencing when it was talking about Cambyses II. But just a thought that came to mind, thought I'd throw it out there. Anyway, so back to where we are in Jeremiah 46 and 18. In the NLT, it reads, "As surely as I live, says the king, whose name is Yahweh of heaven's armies, one is coming against Egypt, who is as tall as Mount Tabor, or as Mount Carmel by the sea." Now, it's not literal. They're not literally that tall, but it's, once again, it's just, putting emphasis on the might that they're coming with. "O thou daughter dwelling in Egypt, furnish thyself to go into captivity." So, clean up yourself and prepare yourself for the captivity that's about to be upon you. "For Noph shall be laid waste, or shall be waste, and desolate without an inhabitant. Egypt is like a very fair heifer." A heifer is a cow, I believe a female cow. "But destruction cometh, it cometh out of the north." Right? So, yeah, Egypt was known as, like a resourceful place, right? And at one point, a very notable place. But now they're going to meet their destruction, right? They're going to meet a time of calamity that's going to come, as it says, out of the north. Because, geographically, when you look at the map, this doesn't really show it too well, but that's the path that the Babylonians took to descend down through the Levant down to that area. Really, any nation that was up north that was trying to get down to Egypt would have to go through that path of the territory of Israel. Verse 21, "Also her hired men are in the midst of her like fatted bullocks, for they are also turned back." So the mercenaries and their armies, their fighters, have become worthless, right? Like fattened bulls and cows. And instead of defending, as it says, they are also turned back, i.e. retreating, and are fled away together. "They did not stand, because the day of their calamity was come upon them, and the time of their visitation." So it was so bad that even those that were hired to fight and defend in the armies, they ran away. "The voice thereof shall go like a serpent," and this is referring to the Egyptians retreating, right, like a serpent that is trying to escape, by slithering. Because serpents, you may look at a snake and think it's slow, but snakes are not really slow. All right, they can also hit the gas, especially when in some of them, some of that area, that terrain, certain grass, yeah, they be out of there. You better hope he's not chasing you. But basically, it likens them onto a retreating serpent. "For they shall march with an army," right, being the Chaldeans, or the north country, "and come against her with axes as hewers of wood." So here it's likening Egypt onto like a forest, and the people onto trees, and how their devastation would be like, men with axes that are chopping them down. "They shall cut down her forest, saith the Lord Yahweh, though it cannot be searched." So once again, likening them onto trees. They're going to be devoured or cut down or broken down like men cutting down trees in the forest, even though there's so there's so many of them, they're so innumerable. because they are more than the grasshoppers and are innumerable, right? There's so much. They're like locusts. Like when you look at locusts and how much of them come at once in a swarm, it's likening the population of Egypt to that, because there were so many of them. As it says, they are innumerable. The daughter of Egypt shall be confounded. She shall be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, Yahweh, the God of Israel, saith, Behold, I will punish the multitude of No and Pharaoh and Egypt with their gods and their kings, even Pharaoh and all them that trust in him. And you know who else was trusting in him? Wicked Israelites that had fled over there, that were told not to go there. And I will deliver them into the hand of those that seek their lives, and into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of his servants, and afterward it shall be inhabited, as in the days of old, saith the Lord. So for a period of time, under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, or under the Babylonians, they would be invaded, right, and attacked. But at some point, the Lord would have them, be able to come back and, dwell in the land again. So the land of Egypt wouldn't be made desolate to where nobody ever dwells there again. Verse 27, But fear not thou, O my servant Jacob, and be not dismayed, O Israel. So, and here the Lord comforts, right? He leaves a comforting message for Israel, okay? Because he's just mentioned all this harsh and devastating judgments, but he's mentioned that regardless of all that, remember, right? Reminding Israel of his mercies towards them. So as it says, But fear not thou, O my servant Jacob, and be not dismayed, O Israel, for behold, I will save thee from afar off. And this the Lord would do, ultimately by sending Yahushua to gather us, right? That saving from afar off, as it says, and thy seed from the land of their captivity, and Jacob, referring to the nation, shall return and be in rest and at ease, and none shall make him afraid. When you see this, when the Lord refers to this, this is ultimately going to happen in the kingdom of heaven, because throughout history, even until this day today, there hasn't been a period of time like this, right? Where the Lord has, because at this point when Jeremiah received the vision, the nation was already divided. The northern kingdom were likely already in the Americas. So there was no point after that where we were all gathered and brought back to the land to dwell there at ease and to not be made afraid. So that's how we know it's going to be something that happens now. Verse 28, Fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord Yahweh, for I am with thee. For I will make a full end of all the nations whither I have driven thee, but I will not make a full end of thee, but correct thee in measure. So, and this is similar to what the Lord has said before, right, in the previous chapter, when he mentioned, though I make a full end of the nations, right, where I drove you, yet will I not make a full end of you. In other words, if I was to completely, do away or end those nations where you were, where I scattered you amongst, I wouldn't end you. Okay, so you'll always, have the mercy of the Lord with you, even in judgment, right? As he says, but correct thee in measure, yet will I not leave thee wholly unpunished. So if it was another nation, the Lord would be able to completely, get rid of them. But concerning Israel, even in his most fiery, furious wrath, he would correct us in measure to where we're not completely consumed and destroyed. Though, as it says, yet will I not leave thee wholly unpunished. So, yeah, I'm going to punish you. I'm not going to destroy you, but I'm not just going to give you, a pass to just do wickedness. And that's the end of Jeremiah, the 46th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.